Okay, I get a lot of questions on Series 70s and 80, and when I'm shopping for guns and at gun shows, when I ask somebody, seems to be a lot of confusion about the difference between, and I'm talking specifically about 1911s. To me, a 1911 is always a 45. They make them a 9mm 380, but the design 1911 was created back in 1911. Great gun, used in several wars, just a good proven round, 45 caliber bullet, good simple operation gun that continues to operate when dirty, reliable, minimize moving parts, and it's simple. Now the difference between a Series 70 and a Series 80 is 4 parts. Now I got in a beef about a guy at some gun show, not really a beef, I was just kind of like, do you have a spacer to change a Series 70 from an 80, and I'll explain that in a second. I'll show you one. But he said, why are you going to change it? He goes, there's only one additional part. Now, I don't know what he was talking about. This guy was, in his 60s, and he says, I've been a gunsmith and worked on 1911s my whole life, and there's only one additional part between a 70 and 80. That could not be further from the truth. I don't know where he got the information from. Not real sure. I'm going to show you the 4 parts that I'm talking about. Maybe he was talking about something else. I don't know. Here's the main parts we're talking about a series. And what a Series 70 is it's the original model of the Colt without a firing pin safety. Series 80 is basically a firing pin safety, and it concerns these 4 parts that were added for lawyers and liability. And the theory is that if the gun was dropped or thrown hard enough on the ground and it hit the ground on the barrel, the inertia of this firing pin could go in here and actually puncture the round and fire it. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. I mean, anything can happen. But so the lawyers got together, and all the safety people and all the people protectionists that want to make everything gun, and all the people that say guns are dangerous anyway, and they fire bullets and they make a big bang, they got gunpowder so they're scary, came up with this additional safety, which I don't like, I don't promote, and I don't buy 1911s with it, and if I do have one or two that I have, I end up converting them. So a series, this picture right here is a Series 80 picture. And it has the 4 additional parts. It has a spring right here. It has the plunger, which stops. There's a little groove right here, and there's a little groove right here. And this piece right here fits in, so the firing pin cannot go forward. When this is pushed up, there's an opening right here, so this groove and this groove fits in here, and then the firing pin's allowed to move forward. So what happens, this is the trigger on a 1911 down here. And what happens is this trigger pushes backwards. It has to move this little piece back, which moves this little piece up, which forces this little piece forward, which forces this little piece up. It pushes the plunger up. It puts tension on the spring to force this big part into the spring area to open up this area so the firing pin can fire. Now, somebody in their brilliance who was not a gun person, who was not a gun guy, who did not carry a gun, who didn't practice firearms safety, who didn't know anything about a gun, decided this was the fix for a possible gun that dropped, that firing pin may go forward and hit the gun if it was dropped. Now, 1911 already has 3 safeties. And I'll get into that in a second here, but basically we're talking about 4 extra parts that were added to a gun with the Series 80s. That's why I don't like Series 80s. I don't like manufacturers that make Series 80s. And most of your high-priced, well-made, custom gun makers do not use these 4 parts. Why don't you use these 4 parts? Because there are 4 additional parts that can go wrong, that can get dirty, that can malfunction, that can bend, that can create dirt, oil. It's just not needed. I don't like it. I think it makes a gun less safe, less predictable, less reliable. I don't like Series 80s, 1911s. And every time I ask somebody if they're selling a gun, is it a Series 80s, they look at me like, what are you talking about? Because most people don't understand this. So here's another picture. These are the 4 parts that add. So the guy that told me there's only one additional part, I got no clue what he's talking about. But he was an armorer for 30 years, so most people probably thought that was impressive and believed him. These are the 4 parts. This piece pushes here, this piece pushes here, it pushes the plunger up against the spring, and it allows the firing pin to pass right here. This little piece right here is what's called a spacer. And what happens with most people that have these, they take these 4 parts out because there's friction here, there's friction behind here, there's friction around these 2 pins, there's friction pushing up, there's friction here, and there's friction on a spring. And all that creates drag and additional trigger pull on your trigger. So people with Series 80s that have all these parts are always trying to make their triggers better. Well, if all these parts weren't there, your trigger gets very lighter, better, smoother, less parts. I mean, it's just common sense. Without all these pieces moving, you're going to have less of a trigger pull. It's going to loosen the trigger. This is called a spacer. This hole right here goes into this hole right here, and this hole right here goes into this hole right here. So you take these 2 parts out, you put that in there so it doesn't leave a gap for your trigger to move, and then you just pull these out and throw them away. Now, of course, all manufacturers that put these in want you to remove these. They know you're going to remove them if you're into trigger or competition or you want your gun smooth and reliable. They know it's a pain, so they make it and they put it in there. Kimber and Sig are the 2 worst. They put it in there knowing that most people remove it and replace it with this aftermarket spacer. What does that do? It voids the warranty, it releases liability, and it makes them so they can wash their hands of the gun and say, you changed it, you modified it. Instead of making the gun like good manufacturers do, Springfield, Wilson Combat, Nighthawk, STI, all your higher brands do not put this crap in their guns. Kimber and Sig Sauer are the 2 that put it in every gun. Earlier Kimbers supposedly did not have it. I have not found one yet. But when Kimbers first came out, when they used to make them good, they did not have these. So I don't own a Kimber. I sold one. It had this. I didn't want it. And I'm trying to find one that doesn't have it, but they're kind of hard to come by. So any gun that's a Series 80 has these 4 parts. People who have converted to Series 80s will remove these 4 parts and add this. Still creates a little friction, but you've only got friction on one piece. This piece does not move, so you don't have moving parts to get dirty. It basically just replaces the space in here so the pins stay tight and straight. So that's what this piece does. Is it ideal to have this? No, you don't want any of this crap, which is why you want a Series 70 1911, in my opinion. This is mine. All the Kimber and Sig Sauers are going to be like, oh, this guy don't know what he's talking about. He just, whatever. I'm just telling you my opinion and why I think that. You can agree or disagree. Here's another picture of the working. This is your trigger. This is your hammer. Your spring's down here. It's going to push the hammer forward. And here's the 4 pieces. Red, 1, 2. That pushes that piece, the plunger, up, which is 3. And the spring right there is 4. They've made the firing pin red here and the firing pin retainer here red. But that's not part of this. All 1911s have a firing pin retainer, trigger, hammer, all the part. The only parts a Series 70 does not have is 1, 2, 3, and spring is 4. So that's the big difference. Here's another drawn out picture of it, kind of showing trigger goes back, puts pressure here, puts additional pressure, because without this you would only be putting pressure on the sear. So it causes additional pressure and rubbing of 2 parts here. It causes rubbing and pressure of 2 parts here. Causes rubbing and pressure of 2 parts here. Behind here on the hammer is pressure and rubbing. The plunger moving up and down is pressure and rubbing, and then you're working against the tension of the spring. And people tell me, oh, Series 70s and 80s, there's no difference. Well, then there's a big difference to me. If there's no difference to you, then, that's your choice. Next picture. This picture, same picture, just made them color. You have your gray piece here, your blue, and your red, then your black spring up here. Same concept. Trigger goes back. Friction, 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 friction. All creates pressure, friction. All create places for dirt, oil, debris, unfired gunpowder. All things to collect in these areas that can cause a malfunction. Less moving parts make a gun more reliable, more functional, more likely to function when dirty. More moving parts when a gun is dirty means it has to be cleaned more. There's a higher likelihood it's going to malfunction. As I said before, I'm going to say again, I don't like Series 80s for those reasons. This is actual pictures. This is the hammer. This is your sear. This is where your connection is. So you have no friction, no additional friction here. Over here, it just shows two of the parts. Has this and this. These are extra friction. These are areas that dirt's gonna collect, grime, unused powder, other things. Now the Kimber lovers are gonna go, well, if you clean your gun, dirt won't collect there. I understand that, but I'm talking about functionability, reliability, friction, pressure, additional moving parts to break, spur, get rough, get use, malfunction. They're just not needed, and again, I don't like Series 80s. Now, people want to know, how do you do this without taking a gun apart? This is a slide of a Series 80. You see that little piece right there? That's the plunger that I've been pointing to. So the plunger's here and the spring's here. The other two parts are on the frame part. This is the slide. So when you see this little ball or any type of depression here, you know it's a Series 80. A Series 70 will look like this with nothing on this side, which I believe is the next picture. Oh no, that's another. The little plunger, if you look underneath the gun, you'll see the little plunger. That means it's a Series 80. That thing gets pushed in to release the firing pin. This one is a Series 70. Notice no plunger, no moving parts, no hole for dirt debris to get in, no moving parts, friction and springs to break. This is a Series 70. This is a Series 80. This is a Series 80. This is a Series 70. So a real quick check of a gun when somebody doesn't know is you lock the slide of the rear and you look up here and you either see a plunger or you don't. If you see a plunger, it's an 80. If you don't, it's a 70. Alrighty, so hopefully now I'll be able to refer people to this when they ask me a question. Just refer to this video. This just shows a quick kind of how the gun functions. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this just a little bit here to kind of show you what's happening here. So the slide's going forward. There's the shell. It's putting in another bullet right there. Here's your firing pin. Of course, it's 70. There's no plunger. Magazine's going to come out. He's going to slide some more rounds in here. Here's your hammer, your sear. When you squeeze the trigger, it's going to release the hammer. The hammer's going to hit the firing pin. The firing pin's going to fire it around. The percussion's going to push, the explosion's going to push the slide back. It's going to hit the ejector. The ejector's going to push the bullet out. The spring in the magazine's putting in another round, and it's sliding it in and loading the next round. Okay? I think I have another little one here that shows a different one. This is a little closer up of the trigger here. Again, what's happening is the trigger is being pulled back. It's pushing right there. If you can see that. Oh, you can't see it because I don't have you in camera. Have to do that again. Let me move this back a bit here. So right here is your oh, it still ain't in there. Hammer goes forward, fires the round. Basically, that's the operation. So, again, you've got these moving parts here already moving. Why do you want to put extra parts in there that create dirt, that requires oiling, that can go wrong, that can malfunction, etc.? Less moving parts equal less friction, less things to go bad, less things to get dirty, etc. So just a quick recap here. Series 80s have all these additional parts, all these additional friction, all these places for dirt, grime, oil, buildup to go. There's a hole up here that gets dirty if it's not clean. They're all unneeded parts, and again, most of your good, not mass-produced, custom, hand-fitted guns, STI, Les Bear, Wilson Combat, Nighthawk, Dan Wesson, all Springfield, or all your guns, which I consider good guns, do not have this. They make Series 70s. They do not make Series 80s. If people stop buying these, the manufacturers will catch on and stop making them. But right now, most people don't know. They're uneducated. Or you've got your Kimber and Sig Sauer lovers out there that just love those guns, and they don't care what it is because they look pretty. They buy the guns because they don't care. And to me, that's like having a Porsche with a Yugo 4-cylinder engine inside. Why would you have a nice gun that looks pretty when you've got all these additional extra parts in here that can malfunction, go wrong, cause problems, get dirty, break, it's just unnecessary. So, real quick, no plunger, Series 70. Plunger, Series 80. Plunger, Series 80. No plunger, Series 70. Hopefully now, when somebody asks, well, I don't know the difference between a 70 and 80, I can say, you know what, go watch this video and it'll explain it. Alright, hope that helps on the difference between a Series 70 and 80 and 1911s. Good luck, these are great guns, love them. Not a fan of Sig or Kimber for the reasons I mentioned. Thanks.